Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning Five here on Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. We're going to talk Ohio State spring game, what we're looking for to end the show. So we're going to get to some spring game talk, but I want to start off Bax talking recruiting. Obviously a big recruiting week for the Buckeyes weekend, but Bill Kurelic, he had a huge crystal ball prediction that he put in yesterday. Rocket Hickman, a young man at a DePaul Catholic, Wayne, New Jersey, ranked as the number 13 athlete in the country, number 124 overall prospect in the country, high four-star kid, the second-best player in the state of New Jersey. Bill Kurelic, the dean of Ohio State football recruiting, has crystal balled Ronnie Hickman to Ohio State. And as we like to say, Bax, you and I both, when the dean puts his crystal ball in, it's pretty much a lock.
Yeah, it's over. That's just kind of how it works. I know we've got a new guy named Bank, and whenever he says something, it's pretty accurate too. But Bill is I used to laugh about Bill. He was very conservative. Every time you asked him, who's next, right? Who's going to be next? Like, well, what do you think your prediction is on this commitment? He'd give you like it's like 52 Ohio State and 48 someone else. I'm like, well, that's a lock for Ohio State, you know? Like, that's just Bill the way he was. So when he crystal balls somebody this far out from another state, it's not just that Bill likes hitting the crystal ball button. It's because he thinks it's over. I mean, put it this way, it may well already be over, and we're just getting told about it. So if Bill says Rocket's coming, then he's coming. That's kind of the way I look at it until I see otherwise, and I haven't seen otherwise for a decade. That's the way it is.
Speaking of Bill Greene, he has put in a crystal ball. He did this a while ago, and actually Bill Kurelic has put in a crystal ball for this young man as well, Alex Gleitman, Steve Wiltfong, I believe. But Jordan Battle, kid out of the pipeline of St. Thomas Aquinas, but Bill Greene had some more intel on him that he posted on the board yesterday. But for those that didn't see it, it was a VIP item. And, Bill, as he likes to say, he has his own rules like Bill Greene does. I got to specify which Bill I'm talking about when we talk about recruiting guys now. But Bill Greene has a rule, when it's a kid from SEC country that commits to you, that just means they know where your state is located. Well, it might be a little different for a kid that's from St. Thomas Aquinas, but Bill had a ton of good information, Bill Greene did. And, it's another one. I mean, as I said, Bill Kurelic is crystal ball Jordan Battle. Bill Greene's crystal balled him. So, this is another one you can, pardon the pun, you can take it to the bank that Jordan Battle, in my opinion, is going to be a Buckeye.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the Bucknuts people might not know Bill Greene as well, but he's a guy who's got a lot of good Florida ties. We're very excited to have him as part of the 24/7 team, and that's not me saying that because we have him. I'm excited he's here. He knows what he's doing. And when both Bills, like when you have a doubling, if you will, it's another great sign for Ohio State. And by the way, this is a pipeline school for Ohio State. Just because they didn't have a St. Thomas Aquinas kid come through last year, think of all the other ones they've had in the past, and their last names aren't just Bosa. So this is the thing for Ohio State, is that this is the type of school that they have connections to down south. Remember, Urban used to be the head coach of Florida. He hasn't forgotten the coaches down there. And, Bill Greene knows the Florida people very well. And while I agree with him, more than I can put into words, that if somebody from SEC country commits to you, you just know who's in the league. The truth of the matter is that Aquinas is one of those schools where, guess what, kids do leave SEC country all the time to go to schools. We've seen it not just for Ohio State, but other Big Ten programs. Iowa, Michigan, everybody else goes down there and gets them, and they're one of the great high school football programs in the country. So if this was some random high school in Florida, I'd be worried, right? But it being Aquinas and you have the double billing, I think you're in pretty good shape for Ohio State.
Last recruiting kid I want to talk about, Zach Harrison from right here in Columbus, Olentangy Orange. And, number one player in Ohio, number 2 weak side defensive end in the country, number 3 overall player in the country. No one's a must get, but he's as close as there is for Ohio State in the 2019 class. In your estimation, any reason to worry about Zach Harrison, or are you very confident he's going to be a Buckeye?
I live in Olentangy school communities. Olentangy Orange High School is a 5-minute walk from my house. Believe me, everybody's excited about having one of the great high school players in the country there. There's a lot of talk about him. Everything we're hearing is that he's intrigued by Penn State, but he's heavily leaning towards Ohio State. This is the kids that you hear just chit-chatting in the neighborhood. This is the parents that you hear excited about it. Remember a couple years ago, I told you I knew somebody who was involved in Westerville South that had kids who played at Westerville South. There was all the talk about the different players that ever come through Westerville South, and they were all hyped about Marcus Williamson. And then, oh, by the way, there's a kid younger than him named Jalen Gill who might even be better. He's an 8th grader at the time. This is the same thing. You hear the same thing from the community in general. They think that he is intrigued by how good Penn State's been, but they know he really likes Ohio State. I would have to see him leave to believe it, and I feel very confident that he's going to be an Ohio State kid. But let's not make any, I guess, misperceptions about this. He is interested in Penn State. I don't think any other school is a real factor here, if you will. I'll be very surprised if another school is a factor here. But for whatever reason, he has been intrigued by Penn State, but it's going to be really hard to pull him out of the cocoon of Buckeyedom. Let's put it that way. So Bax doesn't have a crystal ball because Bax just likes to give opinions. Bax isn't smart like all the reporters out there, and I shouldn't be third-personing myself. It's kind of weird. But if I had a crystal ball, I'd have him, Zach Harrison, to Ohio State, and I've had it a long, long time ago.
I like it. And speaking of landing the number 1 player in the state of Ohio, that's exactly what Chris Holtmann did on the basketball front yesterday. Alonzo Gaffney, huge, Garfield Heights, number 1 player in Ohio, like I said, one of the top 20 players in the country. He's ranked as the number 18 player in the entire country according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. So it's huge that you get the best player in Ohio, and it's huge you get a top 20 player. He's the first 5-star recruit that Chris Holtmann has landed so far at Ohio State, hopefully the first of many. And I don't think Chris Holtmann needs to land a ton of 5-star guys, to be ultra successful. He's a guy that if he lands, just a steady stream of 4-stars, I think he's going to do really well. But he's going to mix in some 5-stars, and getting Gaffney is huge. He's every bit of 6'9". I'm hearing he could grow to 6'10" or even 6'11". He's got to put on weight, about 190 pounds soaking wet Bax, but this kid is super athletic and a great get for Holtmann and the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, how long has it been since we had a 5-star recruit? It's been a while. And I'd argue the downfall of the Thad Matta era came when Thad stopped getting the best kids in Ohio. I mean, if you look at early on, of course he got guys like Conley and Oden that weren't from Ohio, right? But guess what? He got DeQuan Cook. He got David Leidy, right? He got Costa Kufos. He got B.J. Mullins. He got Jared Sullinger. He got Aaron Kraft, I mean, he got all these guys who were from Ohio, and then he went into Indiana and took their best players, and that's how essentially Thad Matta put together his teams. And then whenever he got away from that, and the best kids in Ohio started to go into Wisconsin and Michigan State and Duke and all these other schools, well, guess what? Ohio State basketball suffered for it. So letting the best kids in Ohio get away is a horrible, horrible game plan, football or basketball. And this is a great time that Chris Holtmann can say, look, I came in with a chicken wire program. God bless Cada for playing the way he did this year, but Holtmann clearly can coach. And after getting the number 1 player in Ohio, something Ohio State hasn't done in a long time, Holtmann's showing he can recruit too. This is a guy who, ever since he's taken this job, has 100% looked like he's the perfect candidate for it. And this is another reason to be, I'm going to use a word that the cool kids use these days, is to be hyped about what this program is doing. I am really excited to see where this is going to go. And, again, you can't say anything other than Chris Holtmann clearly gets it. And let's hope he keeps getting the best Ohio kids to stay here in Ohio.
Since we're using lingo that the kids use, I mean, Chris Holtmann to me is very much woke. Right, Kyrie Irving? He is very hey, to finish the show, as promised, I want to talk some spring ball, some spring games specifically, like what we're going to be looking for. I mean, obviously quarterbacks, we can start with that. I'll ask you some more, but we'll just start with that. I mean, the quarterbacks, and hopefully the weather holds up, but I guess if it's raining, the quarterbacks get practice, throwing in the rain. If one of them can show they could do that better than the other, it's another feather in their cap. Just from a quarterback perspective, what are you expecting to see on Saturday? What are you going to be looking for?
I mean, let's be realistic here. You're not going to see enough from Martell one way or another because he's not going to be able to run, right? He's going to have a no-contact jersey on. I'd be surprised if they let Tate out there in a non-black jersey, right? So we're not going to get to see a lot of whatever Martell's role is going to be. And, they're going to call a pretty basic defense. We've seen in past years, the passing game looks glorious every year in the spring, right? I mean, it's because they're not really stunting. They're not mixing up with blitzes. They're not really disguising coverages. They're playing pretty basic, right? So you're going to see a lot of passing yards. You're not going to see a ton of physical contact because the coaches don't want to run because they know they have good running backs and they know they have good defensive linemen. And there's no reason to get these guys banged up any more than they need to be. So, the passing game is going to look great. We're going to look at both these quarterbacks and say, wow, look at that play by Burrow. Wow, look at that play by Haskins. Hey, Martell's got a better arm than people give him credit for because they think he's only a short guy who can run. Hey, look at that throw by Haskins. Wow, nice play by Burrow. and it's going to be a bunch of fancy stats at the end of the day. I mean, unless one of them just tanks, I'm expecting both to show very well, but that doesn't change really with what we think about these guys. I mean, I think the consensus is that they're two of the 5 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, maybe two of the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten, and only one of them can start. That's the problem for Ohio State, as good of a problem as it may be. So I expect both guys to play well. I don't think the spring game is going to change what Urban thinks of these guys, barring something really weird happening.
Just from an offensive perspective, other than the quarterbacks, what intrigues you the most?
Rashad Berry. I want to see the tight ends. There's a lot of talk about with Jeremy Ruckert coming in that the Buckeyes are going to finally use the tight end, right? And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're on year number, 14 of this is the year we're going to finally use the tight end? Ever since Hartsock left, I think this is the year we're going to use the tight end, right? So maybe this is actually the year we're going to use the tight end. I don't know. But I want to see Rashad Berry. I want to see the other 2 younger tight ends that we had, Houseman and Farrell, and see what they end up doing. Because with Ruckert coming in, that's a crowded tight end room. And if Ruckert's as good as everyone thinks, then you may have one of your best tight ends being the youngest tight end, and that means who's going to be around. So I'm really interested to see how they utilize them in the passing game, because guess what? We know Ohio State has a lot of really good receivers. Virtually everybody's back at that spot. And if one of them catches 3 touchdowns, it doesn't mean that person's all of a sudden going to be great. If Paris Campbell starts catching out routes, doesn't mean he can do it in a real game during the fall, you know? It's going to be real interesting to see, though, if they're actually designing plays to get the ball into the tight end's hands through the air, especially with the way we saw with Berry last year. The guy can catch. The guy was a freaking beast. If he can hold on to the football after he catches it, he could be a real game changer at tight end for OSU. So I'm actually pretty interested in watching that. Although I probably will be watching the offensive line position maybe more than anywhere else from the offensive side of the football.
I like your comments about Rashad Berry. He's raw as a tight end, but man, he is a beast. I mean, if he can just hone his skills a little bit more, and I think Kevin Wilson's doing a great job with him. You told right away when Wilson came in that he liked Rashad Berry, and Berry could be a beast for the Buckeyes. Defensively, last thing before I let you go, and you can name more than one thing, of course. What are you most interested? I'm guessing it's linebacker, but that's why you can name more than one if you want to. But just what intrigues you most about the Silver Bullets on Saturday?
I am going to change it up, Dave. I don't want to talk about the linebackers. You know why? Because we're not going to see them hardly play against the run in this game, right? I think with the receivers that Ohio State's going to want to be seeing, you're going to see a lot more of a nickel set than you're going to see all 3 linebackers on the field. Generally, spring football isn't really a great time to evaluate your linebackers and your running backs because it's a pass-heavy spring game. I'm much, much, much more interested in the defensive backs because while the linebackers are a far bigger concern, we're not going to get an answer until the fall. The defensive backs, we believe we have an answer. So all of a sudden, if Kendall Sheffield is breaking up passes instead of being half a step slow, I'm going to be really excited. All right? If Shaun Wade goes out there and looks like the tall, lengthy corner that he was expected to be as one of the top 2 corners in the country coming out of high school, I'm going to be really excited. If Amir Reep and Isaiah Pryor look great at safety off next to Jordan Fuller, who I don't think will play a lot because we know how good he already is, I'm going to be really excited. But if we go out there and Kendall Sheffield's still a half step slow, and David Arnett is still slower than the rest of the receivers on the team, and you're seeing Shaun Wade looking lost, my concern level is going to go up a lot more. This is going to be a pass-heavy spring game because it is every year. So this is an opportunity to see that these corners have actually improved like we hope they have. Because remember, we haven't talked about them a lot because we're much more concerned about the linebackers. But last year, what happened? Every pass not thrown at Denzel Ward, everyone held their breath. Every pass team was that stupid. So I'm expecting these guys to be much improved. It's what you see. We've talked all spring about it. But I'd really like to see it on the field. You show me a Kendall Sheffield that's running stride for stride and breaking up passes, I'm going to feel really good about the defensive backs this year. And that's the number one thing on defense that I really want to see. And frankly, that's the number one thing on defense that we're going to actually get a real read on because it's not a real straight-up game environment. You know, Chase Young isn't going to be stunting and going inside and all kinds of other crazy stuff, you know, trying to get 5 sacks because you can't touch the quarterback, right? So we're going to learn a lot more about our defensive backs than we are anywhere else by default. And it's a position where it's like a validation of sorts in our confidence that we've been hearing about these guys. If they have a rough game and there's 7 passing touchdowns, I'm going to start being much, much more concerned. than I am right now about the defensive back position, which I think everybody feels pretty good about right now heading into the spring game.
Great insights, as always, from the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. We covered a lot of ground on today's show. Fun show. Spring game's going to be fun. You can catch Bax's column every week on Bucknuts. It'll come out this Sunday, so I'm sure it'll be heavy with insights and opinions on the spring game. So thanks again to Matt Baxendell, and thank you to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land. Swag, 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 swag.